I'm your daddy.
I can be smart when it's important.
I'm your daddy. I'm
sorry to this
I'm your daddy.
Welcome to Daddy Dailies, a podcast hosted by Not Your Daddy's Films. On a film set, dailies are sent out after a shoot day so you can see the work in progress. Daddy Dailies are conversations that go behind the scenes so you can see what work went into the process and be better armed to succeed in the industry. Daddy Dailies, hosted by Not Your Daddy's Films.
Welcome back to Daddy Dailies. I am Vika Stubblebine. I'm one of the co-founders of Not Your Daddy's Films, and I'm hosting today. I am sitting here with Yangzom Brauen, an award-winning film and TV director. Her short film, Born in Battle, about child soldiers, received the well-known CICT-UNESCO Enrico Fulchignoni. Am I butchering that? Yes. Award, as well as the UNESCO Gandhi Medal. The film was shown during the UN committee meeting in Geneva and won the Audience Award at the prestigious Max Ophüls-Preis. Mm-hmm. Did I say that right? Yes. We're going to get
German.
a little...
I know, it's Max Ophüls.
Yes. It's beautiful, and I feel so American that I'm having trouble pronouncing.
That's okay.
After the screening of the film in 2018, in a Los Angeles movie theater, she got instantly offered her first TV directing gig for NCIS LA. And she has gone on to direct shows like FBI, 911, the Emmy-winning Matlock, Death and Other Details, which is a personal favorite of mine, American Horror Stories, and more. Yangzom is active and vocal in the Tibetan freedom movement. And in 2009, she wrote her first book, Across Many Mountains, which became an instant European bestseller. Across Many Mountains is a memoir about 3 generations of Tibetan women, Yangzom's grandmother, a Tibetan nun, her mother, and her own story. Her feature-length documentary, Mola, a Tibetan tale of love and loss, premiered at South by Southwest 2025. Mola follows a Tibetan nun exiled from her homeland in 1959 to escape the Chinese occupation. Now 100 years old, Mola has decided her last wish is to die in Tibet. I just watched this film and it is gorgeous, and I'm so excited to talk to Yangzom about it, as well as her career overall. So welcome to Daddy Dailies.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Before we talk about the documentary, which I have so many questions. I want to talk about your career. You were raised in Switzerland, mm-hmm. and your father is an anthropologist and your mother is an artist. How did you come to filmmaking, and did your parents' occupations influence like how you came to that career path?
Well, I started pretty early on to draw, so I was more like a painter.
Oh.
I think my parents gave me a paper and pens when I was 2 years old, and I just loved doing that. And so my parents thought, oh, she's going to be an artist. She's going to be like, just painting and drawing all her life.
Yeah.
But then when I was 6, I just started putting wigs on and high heels and
perform.
Ugh. But I also performed and directed the other kids to perform. So I thought that's acting, right? So I didn't really know about directing. I thought that's acting, everyone has to perform. And so it was natural that when I was 16 in Switzerland, we have like 9 years of school, mm-hmm. which you have to do. And with 16, you're done and you can decide where you want to go. And so I applied for the University for Theater and Music and got accepted in Bern. And so I was like, great, so I'm going to do theater. And
I'm going to be an actor.
Yeah, I'm going to be an actor. And so I started doing that. I moved to Berlin, mm-hmm. and I was acting there and did a lot of theater, but then also TV and film. And so as an actor.
Yeah.
And how I came to LA was I was cast in Aeon Flux, which was this sci-fi film with Charlize Theron. And so I met all the Americans. I'm like, oh, I like them. So let's just check out LA. And then I flew over there and I was like, oh, I like the city.
You do like LA?
Yeah, I do like LA. And I love the diversiveness, it's so big, and I love the sun. I realized I miss the sun in Berlin or in Switzerland. It's raining a lot. It's dark a lot. And it makes me depressive.
Yeah.
But I'm not a depressed person.
It's seasonal, though.
It's just so seasonal. Yeah. So I'm like, let's try it. And so I moved here. The first 2 years I was going back and forth, and you just kind of start a new life in your mid-20s. And I did a lot of commercials because I had an accent and I didn't look Swiss or German, but I spoke fluently German, Swiss, and French because I'm half Tibetan. I just realized, oh, this is not going to be an easy road like I thought. Like it's more diverse here, but it's still also like very strict. And I was always interested in directing anyways. I did a documentary about my grandmother when I was 20, when she said she wants to go on a pilgrimage in exile in India. And so I said, let's follow her because I want to know, you know, from the older generation, what kind of customs they have and where do they go to those holy places about Tibetan Buddhism. And so I followed her, and that's the first time when I started to learn editing, filmmaking. It was with my then boyfriend. I said, let's buy a camera and just go for 3 months and travel through India and follow them.
And you taught yourself how to do everything.
I thought, we taught ourselves how to do it. And so I had an editor who taught me how to use Final Cut.
Okay.
And I realized, wow, I love that because that's a part of storytelling. And so I started editing all my friends' show reels, my own show reel. So I kept doing it just to be, you know, like.
And practice.
In practice, And so my dad always thought I should go to film school. And I said, no, I'll go the other way. I'll just do acting and eventually I'm going to direct. And eventually I said to me, I have to start somewhere because no one is going to give me a job as a director if I've never done anything. Yeah. And so I co-wrote a comedy. And I also said, let's not do a short film, let's do a long film because we put so much energy in there. And Kickstarter just started at that time. That was like in 2013. And so I said, let's finance it with Kickstarter. And my goal was to do a feature-length comedy with stars from Switzerland who live in New York and LA and bring it to the movie theaters in Switzerland.
How cool.
And so that's what we did.
So you learned by doing. It sounds like on everything.
And after that film, I realized this is really something I want to pursue professionally. Directing. And I just really enjoyed it. And I think my, like, you know, like the early days with art came together and that the moving picture is something which I'm so interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm sure as an artist, like a fine artist and a painter, and you just have a natural eye for light and composition. My father is a photojournalist. Both my parents are journalists. So similarly, they were like, you should go into not what we're doing, you know? For a long time wanted to be a journalist. Everyone in my family is a writer. And they were like, don't do that. You're not going to make any money. It's a grind. And I was like, I'll do the more practical thing. I'll be an actor.
That's also good for money, right? I think I never thought about money. It was I always just wanted to be creative, right?
Yes.
And money is a nice side effect of like if you're successful. Anyways, but then I thought, okay, with acting I make my money, and with my independent films, I'll just tell stories, right? And so after my feature length, I did 2 shorts and the child soldier film, and I showed it here in a downtown movie theater because we got accepted to festivals, but you know, like I had this dream of like, I want to have my film in a
real theater.
Well, in a real theater, but also like I read the rules for like, how could you get nominated for the Oscars, right? For a short live action film. And they said either you have to get to a top tier 1 festival in a competition, or you show your film in a movie theater in LA or New York, like 3 times a day for 5 days. And so I'm like, oh, great. So I called some movie theaters and I found one in the downtown and they're used to it. And I said, oh, great, I'll do the premiere there. Cool. We had all the people. And then every day I was there, and one day there was like 5 people, sometimes there were 3 people, and I always introduced myself, like, I'm the director. And so there was a couple I didn't know, and I said, how did you hear about my film? And they said they know the boy who is in my film.
Yes.
And I asked him what he does, and he said he's a TV director. And that's how I'm like, oh, wait, I heard someone telling me that you shadow a TV director. Can I shadow you on one of the shows you do? And he's like, yeah, let's see when I do another show. And so 6 months later, he said he's doing NCIS LA, and the producer said I can shadow. And so that's how it started. And then I asked the producer and the showrunner if they would give me an episode.
I love that you did that.
And they're like, yes, you should maybe meet the people from CBS. And I'm like, okay. So I made an appointment with CBS, and they said, well, maybe you should shadow someone else, and we can't really hire you. And I'm like, okay, so who can hire me? It's like, well, the showrunner, the producers. So I went back to them and said, I met with them, I'm open to shadow someone else, and I would still love to do an episode. And so after 3 emails in 9 months, they suddenly wrote me back and said, are you available then and then? And I'm like, yes, we'll give you an episode.
Oh my goodness, that is so cool.
And don't fuck it up.
And don't fuck it up. Okay, this is what is said at the, so I write on SWAT, which has just been canceled, which is very
I'm so
sad.
Sorry. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a beautiful 8 years of, this family together. But all this to say that at the end of every tone meeting that we have, our showrunner goes, and don't fuck it up.
Oh, he does say that? That's so funny.
It's become a tradition. And so our producing director, she's like, and?
Don't fuck it up.
And don't fuck it up? Are you going to tell me, please?
Well, yeah. And I said, okay. And, if you do a good job, we'll hire you back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, it's hard to get the first episode. It's even harder to get the second.
Yep.
And then it's hard to get another show, because after 2 episodes or 3 with the same show, you still have to get to know the people in other shows, and they're still going to say, well, you've only done like 3 hours of TV. And so I started to get meetings, and Paris Barclay hired me then for another show, Station 19.
Yes.
And then Peter Lenkov I met, and he had 3 shows, and suddenly I got hired for Hawaii Five-0, MacGyver, Magnum PI. So it's like I realized like these are all these different families, and I just realized I love doing it.
Yeah, I love that so much. When you shadowed NCIS LA, and then directed yourself, what was the biggest difference for you, having come from doing your own work? Like, it's obviously a huge crew, but also there's action, and
that was the hard part. So the good part is you have a lot of money, and so you can get all the gears you want to tell the story, right? So for me, it's always like, what do I need to tell the story? It's not just like, oh, I want to have a techno crane or a whatever, like a steady cam. It's more like, why do I want that to tell the story?
What are you trying to communicate with that?
And that was the nice thing, that I didn't have to like count the money and say, I can't afford a steady cam operator, and that's not gonna, and forget about a techno crane. So, but the harder part was like, I never did action. So I thought I'm gonna get my first episode, it's gonna be like an easy, more comedy driven episode. No, they gave me one with like a big shootout in a parking lot, and then added an explosion.
Was that stressful?
Yes. I was reading the script. I was like, what? And then another shootout on a mountaintop, and then they roll down the mountains, and then they run around, and then the doors get shot in, the walls get shot in, and I've never done it. So.
And how many days did you have overall?
It's 7 days of prep and 8 days of shoot with NCIS LA.
And for that sequence, probably.
Yeah,
a day.
it goes really fast.
It goes fast.
But then you have 3 cameras. I only work with 1 camera. And so I didn't have my DP in prep. So I was very close with my AD, who also directed. And you just go with the flow, you just learn certain things. I got overwhelmed with the gunshots, and a director told me, just see it as a dialogue.
Oh, that's
and
great
I was
advice.
like, oh, that helps me so much. So I say pang, pang, and then you respond pang, pang, pang. And so I was like, okay, so that helps me to kind of tell everyone, okay, he's going to shoot 3 times, and then the response is going to be 2 times back, and then he's going to run and take cover over there. So you just really have to plan it out with the stunt coordinator, with everyone else, and then with all the meetings you have, which is well structured, where you have the special effect meetings, and you talk about the squips, and what is it, a dust hit, a zerk hit, or like all these things. I'm like, what is a zerk hit? What is a dust hit?
And for those listening who don't know, what is a zerk hit?
Well, a zerk hit and a dust hit is like the actor shoots, but nothing comes out, like it hits the wall, and so there's the special effects guy who has the real gun. I mean, not a gun, but it's like he times it and shoots exactly in that area where the actor shoots. So you have a little dust hit,
so you can see the reaction of it. Yeah,
and so sometimes we don't do it because it's too close to an actor, and so we'll do it in post. A lot of times, just to be on the safe side. There's a lot of these things, and also all the explosions you talk about in depth, how that happens and what we need and how much time it takes. And it's literally learning by doing. I had just like the technical stuff I didn't know and had to learn with every episode.
Yeah.
And I still learn. I've done almost 40 episodes now, but I'm still learning in every show. But I have now in 6 years, 40 shows, I kind of like know now the groundwork, let's say that.
Totally. And the technology changes. So you're always going to be learning, but I think that's the joy of it too, is there's always a new way to tell a story. And if you're on a well-oiled machine, like a long-running show, or NCIS has this whole universe, and people, I'm sure, have worked on one and gone to another, and you're really, hopefully, in the best case scenario, brought into a well-oiled machine that can support you and bring the vision to life and bring what you want to life, but then also show you the things that they do really well. Yeah.
And I bring oftentimes you come to a show, like you said, it's well established, but you're not going to change the show because you have the same actors and you have the same DPs and the lighting, but you bring, as the guest director, a new vision of how you want to tell this episode and how do you want to shoot it. Of course, some shows say we don't want Dutch angles, we don't want handheld. And so you go with that, but you also push a little bit the boundaries and see how far you can go to tell the story without changing it.
Because you had learned how to edit when you were making your documentary and your shorts and whatnot. When you are working on a television show, you get your director's cut, you get a couple days, and then it's out of your hands. Did you learn anything from seeing your cut to what ended up on air? Did it change a lot, or did it affect your process going forward?
Well, I always try to be closer to time, so it doesn't give them too much wiggle room to change your cut.
That's smart. Yeah.
So that's what I learned, and we get 4 days of editing, and I just try to go closer to time so they can, sometimes I have to cut out an entire scene, so I'm thinking which scene could be cut out, which doesn't really move the story forward. But then I also know they like the comedy of it too, so let's shorten it. And so what I do while I'm shooting, I already go through the dialogue where I feel like that's a repetition. So I mark it for me when I go into editing. So I also edit lines.
Okay.
And not just, because I want to have the breathing room in between. So it's not about always talking. What the writers write sometimes too much. And we always say it's going to be longer than 42 or 43 minutes. It's going to be a 50-minute episode. And we have to cut 8 minutes out, which is really hard because we put a lot of effort into all these scenes. So I just think, okay, what can I cut out talking wise so I can get these silent moments too.
I love that. That's really cool. My experience has been as a writer who then goes to set to produce the episode. Do you have a preference when you're working on something? Do you like having the writer or showrunner or someone there, or do you prefer when they're not there and you're just, working off the script and working with the crew?
I had both. So I had showrunners on set the entire time. I had writers on set. I had no writers, no showrunners. And it just always depends on how you get along with everyone and how they respect your space as a director. And but overall, I always had good experiences with the writers on set, and it was always nice. And I had a lot of newer writers, and they almost shadow me. I have a lot of shadows too, which I enjoy because I shadow the director, so I like to give back. And so I enjoy having, people who want to direct and
you want to learn
and I can give them my insights and I tell them how everyone would direct this scene differently than I do. So nothing is right or wrong. It's just what you see and what is important for you. So I think that's so important.
And that's why a tone meeting is so helpful too, because then, the showrunner can tell you, this is how I see this scene and what is important to me. And I would imagine you can hit your important things and also make sure you're getting the things that they've told you are important to them. For somebody who's doing this for the first time, either a director or a writer on set, that you're it would be really helpful if the writers did this, or it would be really helpful to a first-time director to do this with, or ask these questions with their showrunner.
I think it's important to I always say day one in prep, you'll get to know all the personalities, and you have to read the room and understand who functions how.
Yeah.
And so I think listening is important, reading the room, understanding how everyone works, and then put your ideas in there. I think that's like something I learned, that it's the same when you get on set. The first hour is going to be you showing how this episode is going to go with your energy. And so the crew has to understand, oh, this is how she works.
Yes.
And so those are always the crucial times, I think, the first day of the prep and the first hour on set when you're shooting. And everything else is just like, you just flow in how you work, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is different. So I wouldn't say you have to do this and this. It's just like, there's certain things I tell them in a shot list. Do not just write the shot list of each scene you're going to shoot. You also have to put it what you shoot first. It's not like how you're going to edit. It's going to be like, what is first before you turn around, and why would you do that first? And that's all in prep, right?
Yeah.
And so it's funny because I had a shadow who got an episode in TV, and she said one day she didn't do that, and she was on set and she struggled because there's so many things going on that she wasn't fast enough to say, what are we going to shoot next? And then once you don't know, everyone else has ideas and chips in, and then you're losing more time until you say, no, wait, we're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
So even a DP you have in prep doesn't know exactly the story how you know.
Yeah.
So you really need to know always much more, because on set while we're shooting, as you know, there's always something doesn't work and you have to imprise.
Yeah,
And
you have to pivot.
Yes. And so it's just the shot list is so important, how you write it down, and it takes a lot of time to do it, but it'll help you once you're on set.
It's your map.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you don't have to always like follow the map exactly, but you've got one. And that is, it's a nice little anchor. For the documentarians listening, what is your advice for starting out, for finding the stories that you want to tell?
So our story was my grandmother, right? So I was always fascinated by her. I grew up with her since I'm a baby, and she lived in our household, and she is or was a Tibetan nun. She became a nun in Tibet when she was 5-6 years old. And then
6 years old. Wow.
She had to run away when my mother was 6 years old from Tibet when the Chinese invaded Tibet, and they lived as refugees in India. And then my dad was a young anthropologist student in India, met my mom many years later and fell in love and married her in India and brought both women to Switzerland. So they literally went from one continent to the next. And so that was
incredible.
The basis of my book, Across Many Mountains, because I wanted to tell a story about 3 generations of Tibetan women and how different we grew up.
Yeah.
Like my grandmother in old Tibet, my mother as a refugee child, and me in the first world, and how close we are still and have the same values, but still live very differently. And so the documentary was then more focused on my grandmother and her aging and closer to death and her rituals she had. So we were like more fascinated about her everyday rituals as a Tibetan nun.
Yeah.
And our working title was Life as a Ritual. And then later, when she suddenly said, when she turned 100, that she wants to return to Tibet and die there, it became a little different, the story. So it's like, we didn't plan where the documentary would go.
That was my question.
And I think that's what it is. Like, you start somewhere because you have an interest in a person or in a story, but you don't really know where it's going to end. And my dad and I, we shot her for so many years, and it took us 10 years to finish this film.
Wow.
And it wasn't like we were working every day on it, but he was filming a lot because they live in Switzerland. And I was there sometimes and filming, and we were talking a lot. We went through archival material, and we couldn't figure out how to edit this together. I understand Tibetan, so I edited the scenes because I understand Tibetan. And then we found a great editor in Switzerland who said, I love it, and I want to just dig into it and look at all the footage and find the story for us, or how, like what is it, what we need to tell the story. He did a great rough cut, and then he got busy, and then we found Jim Haygood at Union Editorial here, who was so fascinated by the story and
Wow.
wanted to support. And so he kind of did the final cut.
Wow.
And was a supervising editor on this show. And yeah, it was really like fortunate to have him. I mean, he's like, he did Fight Club, right? And
That's
so
so
I'm a big
incredible.
fan of Fight Club.
Yeah.
And now he does documentaries like for HBO and Netflix. So it's amazing.
The crossover between Fight Club and Mola.
I know, it's so different.
No, that's incredible.
But he said, as a documentary editor, you are also kind of like finding the story, right?
Yes.
Because it's so much about storytelling. What do you edit together to tell the story? It's so hard to write a script for a documentary, I think, because you don't know what the people are going to say or what's going to happen in their lives.
Yeah.
So I think you have to have an idea or a fascination for a person or for a subject matter as a documentarian filmmaker, and then just start finding the story while you're doing it.
When you and your father were filming Mola, your grandmother, was there a way, like, was she like, yes, film me, no problem? Or did you have to get her comfortable with having the camera around all the time?
No, she liked the camera. I think if she would have been born here in the West, she would have become an actor, I think. Because she became a nun. But
she's very funny.
I know, she's very funny. She has a great humor.
Yeah.
She, got along with everyone from young to old to, she couldn't even speak German really, but she communicated in a different way with people. So she was okay. And she did complain about, why do you film me? Like whatever, like everything I do, like I brush my teeth, you film me. I get up, you film me. I pray, you film me. And so it told her that this is also something for Tibet. Her life was always political because from where she came from, and that she wanted to return to her homeland and die there. And that was like something where she agreed to and said, okay, that's good because it's for Tibet.
Yeah. For those listening who do not know that history, it is interwoven into the documentary because it is so, part of your family history. Can you give, I know it's complicated, but a little overview of how that's involved in the documentary, Chinese, Tibetan sort of history?
Yeah, so the history, we want people to be, after our film, after Mola, to want to know more about Tibet. So we didn't want to do like a voiceover and have the archival footage and tell about, in 1959, the Chinese invaded Tibet. It's like make people curious about, I want to know more.
It worked. Yeah.
It worked, right?
I went and I did some research.
And how we integrated the archival footage about where we see what happened in Tibet was because my grandmother would tell us that she had nightmares when she was sleeping from the war and from her, flight from Tibet to India. And so that's how we actually put together the archival footage. Every time we see the archival footage, the next thing we see is her turning on the light. So it's kind of like the nightmares, or also the beautiful dreams she had while she was in Tibet before the Chinese invasion.
Yeah.
And the Chinese invaded Tibet because they said Tibet was always part of of China. And the sad part is that now the Tibetans in Tibet also get so brainwashed that they believe the Chinese story. We lose our culture, our language. And I think once you don't speak the language anymore, you're going to lose a lot of the identity of a culture. And
100%.
So the Tibetans in exile, we try to keep that alive.
My grandparents were Ukrainian activists, and they fought against the Soviet Union. Ukraine gained and lost its independence many times. And depending on who you talk to, they'll say that they're Russian or they're Ukrainian, and they live in the same place because of, the way the borders changed and the time that they grew up and maybe when they came over to the States. So I found, while it's different, that my family has always really held on to the Ukrainian culture and like who are the writers and the artists and the people, and just making sure that I, as like a child in America, knew all these things about my culture, because it was so important to my grandmothers not to lose that. And I think that it was so beautiful to see the way that even you behind the camera, like the 3 generations within this documentary. And how much your mother respected and cared and prioritized Mola's like desire to go back, even though it was really hard for her. You could tell in the documentary, she's like, she's old, and if she goes and she does die there, this might be the last time that I see my mother, because she didn't, like, she helped with the travel but wasn't there. And you see in the documentary that they're FaceTiming each other and whatnot, but it is this very beautiful, very real balance of like love and support, and then also some grief and pain. Yeah. So just wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it's nice that you know, like that it also reminds you of your mother and your grandmother's relationship. And I think that's a motivation for everyone to tell their stories, where they come from, and who our elders are, because they have a lot of story they don't tell. And I have a lot of German friends where they say, you know, like, our grandparents didn't want to talk about the Second World War because they felt so ashamed, and they just kept it for themselves, you know. So some older generation people, they don't want to talk about it. And I'm so happy for my grandmother that she did.
Yeah. And that it's
open.
recorded.
Yeah. And it's recorded. And it's not just, you know, in the book, we go so in depth into her whole life. And in the film, it's more about the life at an age of 90 to 100.
Yeah.
So
was this the first time that you had worked with your father and your mother on a creative project?
The book was the other
first,
one.
the other one, yeah.
Because I needed my dad for all the historical things and the religious part, because that's his expertise and it's not mine. And then I needed my mother to remember all the stories she heard from her mother, because my grandmother was already forgetting them.
Yeah.
But I think my grandmother told over and over the stories to my mother, so she keeps it.
That's great.
So she can repeat it.
Yeah.
And the photo was taken by my brother, so it's a whole family project.
It is. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
There's this element of taking care of your elders and the fact that your grandmother lives with your parents that made me think a lot about American emphasis on outsourcing things and on the way that we take care of our elders. I think there's a really beautiful thing about having families sort of live together that isn't as common in American culture. And I'm curious if that was like a priority to emphasize in the documentary at all.
That was the hardest part for my mother, to accept that she can't do it herself, because I wasn't there. You know, like in Tibetan society or families, you have 4 generations of people living together, right? So that's, or 3. And so when we were kids, yes, my grandmother was taking care of us while my parents were going somewhere. And so now normally I should be home and my brother still. And so we would kind of take care of the grandmother. But because we were all over the world in our society and travel everywhere, my mother couldn't do it anymore. And we had to tell her, you don't sleep and then you get sick, right? So in Tibetan families, you have then maybe 5 children, and 2 of them stay home and take care of the grandmother while the mother can sleep and the father can go to work. And that was impossible. And for my mother, it was the hardest thing to even talk to her and ask her, is it okay if you go to the old people home? And it was really close. It's a 5-minute walk, and they were there every day. The only thing which she couldn't do was the nights where she had to sleep also, because it happened that my grandmother would wake up every 2 hours and just get to the toilet and fall, and my mother had a camera in the room and would get up and just had and my mom had a hard time falling back asleep, so she would be awake all night. And we were worried about her and
her health
and she, for her, it was a very hard decision. She says she should have kept her at home and she would live longer. And I said, she's already 105, you know, so I'm like, we all know we're going to go. And so
and she seemed very ready.
And she was ready. And I think she stayed alive so long for my mother to, you know, like, because she's like, I'm staying until my mother or my, you know, my mother says I'm ready to let go. And they were so tight because they were never separated. Right? They always lived together. And so it's a very special bond they have and share.
There's a part right at the very beginning of the documentary where your mother is reading a birthday card to
Mola.
Yes, to Mola. And I was wondering if there's something that you hope viewers take from seeing their relationship, because it is so special and it is very different to see people who have lived together that long.
They have arguments, right? You see that also in the film. It's not just that my grandmother is a holy Tibetan Buddhist nun, and she's also a human being who has her flaws. And so I think it's a mother-daughter relationship you can look into.
And you can find connection and relate to it.
Exactly. And everyone can relate to it too, to their own parents, right?
Yeah.
And so, but they did have a lot of like love, and it's an unconditional love.
Yeah.
Even in their fights, they would always love each other.
Yeah.
And that I think you can see in the film too.
Yeah, there's a really beautiful line that stuck with me where your mother is talking to Mola and asking her, like, where are you when she's in the home? And she's like, I think I'm home because I'm with you. And I started bawling. I was just like, oh, it's so...
Yes, that's what she said in the old people home. She said, I don't feel lonely because you're there.
Yes.
As long as you're there, I feel home, right? So
exactly.
It didn't matter where she was. It wasn't connected to a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to the archival footage, where did that come from, and how did you did you have to work with museums or whatnot to get your hands on that material to include it?
We just researched a lot online and went to different libraries, even in Russia, because they had a lot of like the stuff. And then the Steven Spielberg archive had like the one film. We had an archival producer helping us to gather all the information. It's like a huge undertaking to get the rights. But also there's a lot of the archival footage. They don't belong to anyone because the rights holder died.
Oh.
But then say Getty got a good...
like
high res, high res, version of that little clip.
Yeah.
But then Pate has the same. So then it belongs to them because they have the high res, footage.
Yes.
But it's at the end, it's like you have to license it from Getty or Pate or wherever you find them.
And I mean, when you are finding an archival producer or these different editors, is there just a way that you're having a meeting where you're like, okay, I trust this person and I think that they're a good person to work with on this project? Or is it a little bit of a gamble?
It happened that she's a good friend of mine, Catherine.
Oh, that's
so
great.
She does that. And so it was like great because I trusted her and I knew she can do it and she helps us. But yes, of course, normally you have meetings and meet the person and talk and see what they think. And then it's a group effort, right? So he would show us a cut and we would give feedbacks. And not every feedback is going to taken into consideration, but it's a group project where everyone helped and had inputs. Also my mother or my brother. So it's like, it's really nice.
When you were watching and giving notes on the edit, was there, there's this phrase, kill your darlings. Were there things that you had to cut out of the film that you wish you didn't?
Yeah, there was, my dad and I, we had like, oh, we like this scene or we like that scene. Scenes where my mother and my grandmother do fun things together. They did like religious things together, building stuff, cooking together. So there was a lot of things or scenes we couldn't include because there was just no time.
Yeah.
My dad and I were like, that's why we were so close that we couldn't really see anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what can we take out without losing the story?
Yeah, because not just what you're seeing on film, this whole person's life and everything. So the context, and that's got to be so hard.
Yeah.
Have you received any great or bad advice that you've taken with you on your career journey? Or any advice that you like to give to your shadows or people who are trying to pursue the same career path as you?
Well, one thing is like, we're all humans. We all have good days and bad days. And as a director, you come on a set as a guest and there's like 100 or more people. And you just never know. It's kind of like you just have to accept that not everyone is always on their best behavior.
Yeah.
And you just have to let it go and move on. And and keep the set friendly and happy and energetic, and
Which can be hard to do sometimes.
And it's hard to do, but it's not, like, you have to be thankful, and it's not a director's job to receive compliments. It's to give and to support others, and I think that's the most important. It's not like, hey, I'm the director, say thank you to me, or like, I'm the best director
Tell
ever.
me how
And
great
I think
I am.
no, it's like everyone else works for your vision.
Yeah.
It's at the end, it's your name, directed by Yangzom Brauen, and everyone else helped you to achieve that.
Yeah.
And also actors, right? So because they have to work with you and understand why you want them to walk from here to here, even if they don't want to. How are you going to explain it? And if they don't want to do, that's fine too. Maybe they have a better idea. So I think just to be grateful that all these people work for you and want to understand your vision of the story you want to tell, and to not take anything too serious and be open-minded.
We're playing pretend.
And yeah, exactly. You can vent.
Yeah.
That's what my agent always said. You can vent with me afterwards, like tell everything to me and I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
And like I had bad days on set too, where like privately, like when my grandmother died while I was on set, for example.
No.
And I knew she's going to die, but then I got this text and I was just reading the text and I just cried. And the AD was there and everyone was there and everyone knew what I was going through. And it was just, it was beautiful and sad at the same time. But these things happen, like there is
life happens.
Life happens while you're working, and we're there with these people more than with your own family most of the time. 12, 13, 14 hours, you see them every day. And so so that's what I think, to be grateful and to let things go.
Yeah, I love that. Because you have a background as an actor, is there an approach to directing actors? My experience as an actor in TV is I always loved getting notes as like a guest actor. And I know that a series regular, it totally depends on their approach and how they like to work. But I feel like sometimes guest directors are afraid to
I'm not
to direct actors. What would you say to that?
I miss that as an actor, that directors wouldn't give me feedbacks, or they would just say like faster, or say that faster. And I'm like, there's editing, so and why like faster, slower?
Yeah, like what's the intention behind
so
this?
What's the intention? Why? And then I would watch myself and I said like, oh my God, I could have done this and that director didn't say anything. So for me, I work with actors, like I go even to series regulars.
Yeah.
And I say something and they challenge me sometimes and say, no, I don't see it like that. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. But the moment I said something, they will think about what I said.
It. Yeah.
Even if they say no, they will give me something else. And it always happens. So I think it's so important for directors to always, why do you do another take? Not just because the camera wasn't good, or even if that's the matter, you still can go and approach the actor and give them a feedback.
Yeah.
And I just worked on Matlock with Kathy Bates. And her and I, we just had this amazing collaboration because she comes from theater, I come from theater.
Yes.
And she wanted feedback. She's like, Yangzom, tell me.
That's the fun part to me.
So it's so amazing to work with her, because I'm not telling her this is wrong and this is right. It's more like, what about, let's find out what the scene is about. What can we improve and have fun with it with each take? And it's not just, we'll do takes just to do takes. I think every take has to have a purpose why we do it again.
Yes, so. I think that's beautifully said. And also that's what makes it fun, is digging and discovering. Yes. There is always another layer, I think, if there's good material to be working with. And
it's not a factory work, even if you say like we do so many episodes and we have to work fast. I said yes, but we still have to have fun and explore and be better and and work with everyone. It's like the same with the operators as well as with actors.
Yes. So when you are seeking inspiration and you're home and you're reading or you're watching television and movies, who are some artists that inspire you, or that anything you're enjoying lately?
I have a lot of photo books.
Oh, I love that.
And so I sometimes just, without like really thinking about if that's the right person, I just go through my photo books or like painters and or I have a picture in front of me from an exhibition I saw, and that influences something I want to shoot.
Cool.
And so I express that to my DP, and he's like, oh, okay. So, just a vision. It's not like, so I like to go to museums. I went to the opera, even if I'm not a big opera fan, but it gives me an inspiration without really knowing. It's just like, it's the in-between when I don't direct. I just like to get nutrition.
Yes. I love
like
that.
Creative nutrition. And it's not just through TV shows or movies. It's also through art.
Yes. I always tell, I feel like I've said this on the podcast before, but I love to go hiking or go to a garden when I'm feeling any way, honestly. Like, it's beautiful and I love being outside, but I do think that fuels me in a way that other things don't or can't. And a museum is just, there's so many great ones here in Los Angeles. So
yes,
I love
there's
that.
theater. I haven't done theater enough in LA because there's so many theater productions.
Yes.
And they're good ones. And even if it's not good, it's like
you learn something and you
just
take
learn
something
and you just dive into your own fantasy, or you see something where I'm like, oh, this is such a great idea, or I love that. So it's kind of like unconsciously it will influence your work as a director or even as an actor, I think. It's just like like just to inspire yourself.
Yes, stay inspired. Especially like we're in a time period in this industry where, everyone is talking about shrinkage and there's a lot of people out of work. And I do think that the reason we came to this city and this place to tell stories and what you were saying earlier about like money is a great byproduct, but most of us come to this because we're like just creatively driven. And so it's coming back to that. It's reminding yourself like, what do I get excited about? And yes, all these things are real, and I don't want to dismiss the industry shrinkage, but like that's not why I didn't come here to be a millionaire or something. I came here to write and make stories. And so I think
if you want to be a millionaire, you should become a banker.
Yes, or a lawyer
or something. They make a lot of money.
Totally. Okay, we've reached our hot take section. This is a portion of the podcast where you can wax poetic, you can vent, you can just share something film related, positive or negative, that is your hot take. And I'll share one as well.
Oh, okay. So something positive, actually.
Oh, I love that.
Hot take is that every film set or TV set should have a ping pong table, because because it's literally, I was on a show and the camera crew had a ping pong table, and I said, hey, can I play too on a lunch break? And we had so much fun. First of all, you get to know, and then the cast started playing too.
Yeah.
And so the cast and the crew mingled together. We have like these 12, 13, 14-hour days, stressful, and we don't go on lunch break to eat. We go and play ping pong.
Yes.
And it's almost like it's a reset button for after lunch, that we have this high energy and it just bonds people.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I think like every set should have something like that, where you can have like the crew and the cast mingle together and have fun. Can be competitive.
Yes.
Can be joyful.
Yes.
And it's just like great for the overall
the vibes and everyone
health.
Connecting.
Yes, exactly.
And it's a little athletic,
I was like sweating. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God. Oh, everyone came with their paddle. Hey, look at my paddle.
Wow.
And so I got a paddle too, and I got like,
does it say your name on it?
No, my shadow.
Yeah.
So Fiona Renee, who is also one of the actresses, but she was shadowing me. I got her one with her name Fiona on it, and she's like so happy.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I love it. It's just great. It's such a great bonding thing, and
I love it.
And joyful, right?
It's so joyful. Yeah. Okay, my hot take is that there's a lot of conversation. This is a little more negative, but I am a millennial, and there's a lot of conversation when I'm writing for a show with commercials remember, people have two screens. They have their phone in their hand and they're also watching the show. And my hot take is that's not how you make art. So put your phone away. Put it in the other room if you have to. I do that sometimes. If I'm going to sit down and watch a movie that I know is going to take my attention, but I have my phone in my hand all day. I need to communicate for work. It's addictive. So I'm like, you have to separate yourself and you have to help yourself out. Otherwise, you can't fully experience the artwork. And I don't want to be in a world where I am writing for 2 screen viewers. I would like to be in a world where someone is just watching this art. So my plea to you at home is put the phone away, put the other screen away, and just watch the art.
Good. I like that.
Yeah.
Even I do have my phone too.
I do. Look, I do too. I'm not going to say I'm perfect because I'm definitely not.
It's like a multitasking thing. I have to always multitask.
Yes.
But it's true. There's certain shows I really have to watch without.
Or I have to go back because I've missed something.
Yes.
So please tell our listeners where they can find your work. Will we be able to watch Mola somewhere?
So we were just at South by Southwest, and now we are in talks with other festivals and distributors. We're going to have a movie theater release in Switzerland in September for sure. So it's going to be all over in movie theaters in Switzerland. And so the rest, I hope we're going to be on certain streaming platforms because it's too early. But there's a website for the film called molafilm.com. And then I have a website where there's like my work, yangzombrauen.com. There's a book website, acrossmanymountains.com.
Yes.
So there's a lot, like you just Google my name and then you'll find all the
Amazing.
websites.
Thank you so much for being here. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour about all these things. It's been a joy. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at Daddy Dailies Pod and Not Your Daddy's Films at NYD Films. We have a website where you can find all of our events in Los Angeles and soon New York. So we'll see you next time, Daddies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Daddy Dailies is presented by Not Your Daddy's Films, a social impact organization dedicated to educating and empowering women and non-binary creatives in TV and film. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a positive review. And if you want more Daddy episode insights and links to what we talked about, join us on Patreon/NYD Films. Daddy Dailies is produced in partnership with Robert Bailey and edited by Carly Tamarin, Vika Stubblebine, Claudia Restrepo, and Gracie Strauss. See you next time, Daddy.